Police officers, firefighters, paramedics, 911 dispatchers, and corrections officers face life and death situations daily. But behind the badge, the headset, and the uniform, the trauma takes a toll. PTSD, anxiety, depression, and burnout are silent battles many fight alone. Where can these first responders turn for real help? Today on Safe Nation, we're speaking with Andy Carrier, retired law enforcement officer and co-founder of Valor Station Augusta, a mental health treatment center exclusively for first responders. We'll explore the unique challenges they face, why traditional therapy often falls short, the life-changing work that's happening behind those walls. This is more than a conversation. It's a call to action. Welcome to Safe Nation. That kind of takes the pressure off. So.
Yeah. So when I saw you and Mark doing it, it was like, God, that's like home to me. It was just so cool seeing people that I really like that are doing that, and it just brought some memories back. So
yeah, I think that's what I got from several people.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were like, "Man, we're so glad so glad you interviewed him. We hadn't seen him in a long time."
Yeah, neat.
It kind of brought him out of, kind of brought him back to the forefront. So I enjoyed that a lot. But what I really enjoy is that you're here.
Thanks.
And that we get a chance to talk about this project that you're doing. Mm-hmm. You spent a lot of years with the Georgia State Patrol mm-hmm. as a state trooper, and during that time period, you were afforded the opportunity to be on. At the time, it was a newly formed peer support team. Mm-hmm. What year was that it got started?
2010.
Yeah, and mm-hmm. so your job was really to help law enforcement officers mm-hmm. Statewide as they dealt with traumatic incidents mm-hmm. statewide. And so that was a really cool position to have, and that was one I'm sure you were considered a blessing to a lot of people for providing that.
Anyone could have done it.
No, I don't think anyone could have done it. Yeah. Not everyone's cut out for doing. That's some heavy stuff. Mm-hmm. That's really heavy.
Yeah. So I know. So you and I were negotiators together. Went through a lot of training, and so if you're a decent negotiator, mm-hmm. You can become a decent peer counselor and a decent clinician also, because there's a lot of things that hold true in each one of those. So an empathic listener. So remember ALS, active listening skills. Mm-hmm. There's so many things that if you're good in one area, then you're going to be good in the other areas too. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of I don't want to say a natural fit, but maybe a natural progression.
Right.
Yep. Yeah,
I can see that. And then so you did that for how many years while you were working? Were you with peer support?
So a little over 10 years.
Okay.
Yep.
And then when you retired, like, how did we get to the point of Valor Station being created? Tell me what Valor Station Augusta is, and how did it come about?
So, and Cliff can tell you about this too. There was it's actually a convent on the south side of Augusta that had been given to the Hale Foundation, which is it's basically a men's, not really a treatment facility, but it's a sober living community. Mm-hmm. And they follow the 12-step program. They go to meetings. They have jobs. A ton of success stories that came from mm-hmm. that. And they were wanting to use this place, but to get there, you had to go through a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And because of zoning and stuff like that, mm-hmm. The people in the neighborhood did not want that type of facility that adjoined their property lines. So a couple of us went to Cliff and we said, what if we take the first responder treatment facility route? Do you think maybe the people in the neighborhood would be okay with that mm-hmm. if we went? They didn't want to hear it. It did not matter. Mm-hmm. You know, when you don't want something, any any reason is good enough to say no. So we and that's why it took us so long to get up and running, because we faced a zoning battle with the county commission, and that didn't go well with us. Initially, it did with the actual zoning committee. They approved it, but then when it went for the full vote before the county commission, they voted against us. So then we took them to court, and we wanted to go to federal court under the "not in my backyard" argument, and a local judge did not approve us to go on to federal court. So that's what the holdup was. So downtown, the Hale Foundation is already zoned for what we wanted to do. So we just bought property, and we'll continue to buy more property in that area. But we're up and running. We have our buildings. We've done some remodeling.
Nice.
Yep. It's not a so the name Valor Station, State Representative Jody Lott, she came up with the name, because when we were thinking about what do we name this, we didn't want it to sound clinical like, or because of the stigma. So where do police officers or firefighters work from? A station.
Yeah.
And then the word valor, it just fit together. So that's what we went with, and the buildings are not this brick and mortar, clinical like place. They're homes that were built in the mid 1800s, and we've remodeled, put a lot of money into these places, and they're absolutely gorgeous.
That sounds nice.
Yep.
And this is downtown Augusta, Georgia.
Yep.
So you're going to be servicing who? Just people in Georgia? You're
No.
very close to South Carolina there.
Yeah.
So is this...
Yeah, so literally we can almost throw a football into the Savannah River from where we are. We're literally right on the state line. So we had 2 intakes yesterday. One was from more North Georgia, and then we had one come down from New York. So it will be helping first responders. So that's police, fire, EMS, dispatch, and corrections from all over the country, local, federal, state. It doesn't matter.
Nice. You referenced Cliff earlier, and you're speaking of the co-founder. You're a co-founder, president, and CEO, Cliff Richards, and he's going to join us. Happy to have him here as well. He's going to join us just a little later. Now, tell me the difference between helping first responders with trauma as opposed to just the general public. What's the difference there?
We're kind of behind the 8 ball with this, because in general, there is a stigma attached to mental health. So when you take a police officer or a firefighter, those professions that involve this bravado and ego. I mean, let's face it, you and I worked in this profession for a long time. There's a lot of that. And then throw in mental health, it's even tougher. So to kind of break that stigma, we try to normalize it. So we can normalize that through a variety of ways, but one is through peer support. So if I'm a peer team member that's been on a SWAT team, maybe that's had to have taken a life, and there's someone else out there that's on a SWAT team and had to take a life, they can relate. Because at the end of the day, peer support is the normalization of reactions through shared experiences. So right away, you've got credibility. So that's at the peer support level. And peer support people can really grease the skids and bridge that gap between what we do in the peer support world and what we do in the mental health world. So we can kind of make that transition a lot easier and make it to where, it's not a stigma. At the end of the day, it's a conversation. When you get this really good, and that's another thing, finding the right person for the right fit.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was going to say, what does it take?
Vetting. The vetting process is so important, because I remember when I was in Uvalde, Texas, after the school shooting out there for almost 3 weeks, and had met with this woman. She had something else tragic happen in her life, and she was triggered by what happened at the school shooting. And so she was turned off to mental health because she was 0 for 2. After what happened in her life about 4 years earlier than the school shooting, she sought the help of a professional counselor and then a psychologist, and was totally turned off on both visits. And So it's because one of the main reasons was that they were unrelatable to her. They weren't on the same sheet of music. And so when you don't have credibility and form that bond, that's the number one indicator of the successful outcome in therapy is the client clinician relationship right off the bat. So before you can ever do any kind of therapy, your first couple of visits may be just shooting the breeze about anything, after the initial intake, because you've got to build that credibility with that person.
Right.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, that's huge.
It is huge. Now, there's a term called toxic stress. And tell me, for the officers listening, how do you define what toxic stress is?
So it can be from a couple of different sources. I think when most think of that, so toxicity as it relates to the environment, toxicity as it relates to an administration, because administrative betrayal is one of the worst things that we go through in our career.
Wait, let's slow down for
Preaching
a minute.
to the choir, aren't I?
We gotta let's slow down.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. I always said that it was toxic environment. There's a toxic environment here, a toxic environment there. And I had someone challenge me on that one time. This person was in leadership, in law enforcement. What do you mean by toxic? You need to be more specific. That makes no sense, blah, 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 And I'm like, dude, you are the definition of toxicity. Toxic stress can come from administration.
Absolutely.
And we're talking about law enforcement here. Give me an example of how an environment looks that's toxic.
So that's when you have people that aren't happy. So you take, I don't know if you remember the Command College, It's Your Ship, by
Abrashoff.
Yep, Mike Abrashoff. And he took that ship that everyone wanted to get off, everyone wanted to get out of the Navy. He takes that ship, and in 18 months, he interviewed literally everyone from the newest seaman all the way up to his XO, and got personal with them. What is it that you'd like to see? What? And he turned that ship around, and all these folks that were otherwise getting out of the Navy, they re-upped, they stayed in. And so I think it's a difference between being a supervisor and a manager and leadership. Anyone can supervise or...
Please say that again.
Yeah, anyone can supervise or manage. A leader is next level. That's not easy because you have to know your people in order to lead.
Yeah.
And he got the time. He took the time. Abrashoff took the time to get to know every one of his people. And so case in point, when one of the worst times in our profession and in our time was 2020. So you look at everything between what was happening in the country, we're smack dab in the middle of COVID. So besides the stress that we had to endure on the job, it was a perfect storm. It was the workplace stress hitting head on moral betrayal or moral injury and administrative betrayal. So we had all three of those things going on at one time, because whether you're an elected sheriff or you're a chief or a commissioner, you have to answer to someone, whether it's voters or other elected officials that you have to answer to. So in a lot of ways, their hands were tied too, because who are you going to make happy?
Right.
And that's, I think, where true leadership is shown when times are tough. And we saw some good examples of that, and I think we saw some horrible examples of that.
I believe so. I would say so. And so all of that can create this toxic stress that we're talking about.
Exactly.
Wow. And then at what point does that become problematic for your health?
Exponentially so. It's not like, we've always heard the old adage, well, leave your work at work and leave your home life at home.
Yeah.
That's not the case. You can't.
You can't turn it off.
There's no on and off switch.
Yeah. You just carry it with you. I mean, it's just... You do. And you got too much on your back, on your shoulders.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you look at, there's different studies that show what our mortality rate is. It's anywhere from 58 to 65 years old. So just say 20 years less than that of the working population is what our life expectancy is. Why is that? Because mental stress, psychological stress, spiritual stress, whatever you want to call it, is directly correlated to our physical health. And so it's, whether it's heart disease or stroke, or there's a really good book called The Body Keeps the Score. And that's written by a psychiatrist named Bessel van der Kolk. He is he runs a practice up in Boston, and he studied Vietnam War vets, and so he's a psychiatrist. He's a medical doctor. He can write prescriptions and stuff. Yet, what he says is the most effective thing that you can do, more effective than any prescription he can write, more effective than any therapy you can go to. What do you think that would be? So think about the mind-body connection for a second. It's yoga.
Ah.
He never would have believed that. There's a form of therapy that we do called EMDR. It's an acronym for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. We can talk more about that in a minute, but he was never a believer of that until he did it, and then he started practicing it himself. And it's a mind-body connection. It's where you hold your stress in the body. So he made that connection with yoga, and it's all connected to mindfulness, yoga. It's all kind of interconnected because... So one of the things with any modality, you can take any, whether it's cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, you can't do those things on a body that's not relaxed. So if you do yoga or mindfulness, you've created the environment to where you can pick up what the counselor or the therapist or the psychologist that's working with you is laying down. So it's pretty neat. So
if you can tap into that when your body is relaxed, would that explain why we have so many officers at the end of their shift, in order to deal with stress, they might go home, they might start drinking. And some of them do it to take the edge off.
Right.
And to help them get into like a more relaxed state. Is that sort of similar, like in terms of trying to find that relaxation? Is that what we're trying to do?
Yeah, so a good friend of ours, he passed away a couple of years ago. He was in recovery for a lot of years, and he went around teaching a class called The Addictive Brain, and how you pick your poison, whether it's any kind of addiction that you can think of. Usually there's a maladaptive connotation that goes along with that. So whether it's drugs, alcohol, a shopping addiction, a gambling addiction, a sex addiction, whatever it is, all those things have in common what they have in common is that they're temporary. You got to keep feeding that beast. You can't get drunk one night and then you're good for 6 months.
Right.
You got to feed that beast every day. And he came up with a formula. So if you can imagine, written out, pain plus DOC equals relief. So pain plus your drug of choice equals relief. But that relief is temporary. So when you go home and you get off your shift, you're sitting in that chair, the magic chair that one of the guys likes to call it, that wrote a book called Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, Kevin Gilmartin. He calls it the magic chair, where we're zoned out. We may take our gun belt off and our shirt off and just sit there, and our kids are coming up or your spouse is coming up and you're checked out. You don't care what is for dinner. You don't care. You're not hearing anything. All you hear is noise, like the teacher from Charlie Brown. That's all you hear. Yeah. And they have that beer. That is typical. That's maladaptive. But there are other things you can do other than that. And now that doesn't mean that this person's an alcoholic. But because you drink a couple of beers after a shift doesn't mean you're an alcoholic. The difference between use and abuse, there might be a fine line sometimes. But when you use it as a coping measure, that's when it can get into trouble. EMTs, paramedics, they're the highest, 40% alcoholism rate, 40%. We're between 25 and 30 in law enforcement. And of course, again, getting back to the, depending on which poll you look at, they're going to be very plus or minus a few. But yeah, paramedics and EMTs, they're at the top of the list.
Wow. So there's this stigma, of course, in public safety about asking for help. How can leadership make it easier to ask for help, for their employees to ask for help? Is there something they can do to make the environment better so that they feel
Absolutely.
comfortable enough to come and ask when they are having when they are in a situation?
So I think again, it's the environment that supervisor has created. Are they a manager, leader, or are they a manager or a supervisor, or are they a leader? If there's a leader, that's already been established, and it's going to make it to where this person that wants help, it's going to be easier to ask that person for help. Give you an example. One of the folks that we admitted yesterday, he was out working a crash not long ago, and he was new to this agency. He had left a much larger agency and came and went to work the crash, and the sheriff pulls up, and he looks, what is he doing here? He puts his vest on and starts directing traffic. Right off the bat, we know that guy's probably a leader.
Yes.
And hence here he is. So as a matter of fact, I spoke to his sheriff, and he was the one that said, look, we want to help him. He might be in a little bit of trouble right now. We'll worry about that later, but let's get him some help first. And I think that's another big thing is, years ago, it was punishment versus helping someone.
I was going to say, like, go ahead and get rid of them,
Yeah.
or, let's take them off our hands. Let's
Right.
cut our losses with this guy. No matter how stellar the record may have been before, all of the great and great things they've done. And I know it depends on the situation.
Right.
But is there a time when these officers could be salvageable?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because you look at it, there are times where, so before this person got into the profession, you look at, let's do a social autopsy of this person before they got into the profession. Nothing out in left field, but they get into this work and this critical incident happens. Then that critical incident happens. Then they go home and they push their wife, or they kick the dog, whatever. They're just pissed off all the time.
Right.
Why is that? Anger is the default emotion for other things. It's because it's easier to be angry than it is to hurt. Especially again in this macho profession that we're in. It's recognizing these things. And the irony is that sometimes we have to let go of people because of how they're reacting to things that they were sworn to do. And I've always said that trooper school or many police academies are great at showing us how to shoot, how to work a crash, how to fight, how to investigate crimes, but they're horrible at what happens after we do those things. Then what?
Right.
So
That's
that's
true.
something that I think we've turned the corner on that, but we still have a long ways to go.
A long way to go, because too, it's like sometimes, you going to a supervisor, for example, that supervisor may just be like, look, suck it up.
Yeah.
Suck it up. It's a part of the job.
Yeah. That's
And it's true. It is a part of the job. Certain things are a part of the job that a lot of, your average person doesn't have to go through on an average job. There's a lot going on and a lot to see and experience when you're doing those sort of tasks, those sort of jobs. But just pushing through it sometimes is not what they want to hear.
Right.
So it's almost like maybe leadership sometimes need to be trained on how to deal with it and what to say. Because they're really making it worse.
Yeah, and there are certain things, that's an old school mentality when we first came on, like the Vietnam vets that were later on in their career because they had to do it. Now, there are certain things that you do suck up, but then there are many things, a supervisor can't speak to what you went through as a kid.
Yeah.
Supervisors don't have a snapshot of what life was like for you prior to you to getting into law enforcement. Because if all that stuff is locked in a box somewhere and it's never dealt with, when you go through a critical incident later on in your career, that stuff comes out too. It's all connected at the hip. So, I think if one of the most important traits a leader can have is empathy.
Right.
Trying to put yourself in that person's shoes, even if you don't understand it, at least showing some empathy and that, maybe I need to not discipline this person, but maybe hand them off to someone that can really help them.
So kind of walk us through Valor Station in terms of what can we expect from Valor Station? So, like, just from the beginning, first of all, how do you even become a part of it, or how do you even participate in the program, or what programs do you offer specifically for law enforcement?
So we have a kind of a two-pronged approach. So we are an IOP, an intensive outpatient facility. It's an intensive outpatient program. So we could be considered a step up or step down program. So maybe a step down program from inpatient, or a step up program from someone that's, say, going to counseling once a week, that needs a little bit more. It's a 28-day program, and that's one part of it. And then I can explain the modalities and the kind of therapies that we use. And then the other part of it is that weekly. So if someone, let's say within a 30 or 40 mile radius of Augusta, wants to come in just to see a therapist one day a week, we also offer that as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, what are the therapies you use, if you would?
So a couple of different
deeper
ones that would be effective for trauma. And we are a trauma facility. We can treat substance use as a secondary or co-occurring issue.
Okay.
But we're not a substance use program exclusively. We're more trauma focused. So there's something called DBT, that's dialectical behavioral therapy. So what DBT is basically, if you look at the word dialectical, that means two things can be two opposite things can be true at the same time. So our beliefs can be true about something, but also the opposite belief can also be true at the same time. And we really get into mindfulness and emotion regulation and stuff like that. We have seen new officers get on the job, come onto the job over the years that had issues long before their first critical incident ever occurred. So a DBT approach is almost as if we are putting the horse before the carriage. Let's go back. Let's go to the root of this stuff. Let's go back way beyond this critical incident and kind of dig into that. So we also have CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So if you look at, say, a picture of a triangle, and at the tip of the triangle we'll put behaviors or actions. So CBT would approach the cognitive side or the thinking side. DBT would approach the emotions or the feeling side. So there's a different way to get to the same result, and that's our behavior. Something else we do, prolonged exposure therapy. One of the, if you look at the symptomology of PTSD, they're broken down into criterions. So criterion C is avoidance. So let's say we worked that horrible crash where several kids were killed, or we were involved in a shooting, and for months afterwards, even longer, we avoid that intersection, or we avoid that shopping complex where we had to shoot someone. Whatever it is, that's avoidance. So whether you avoid something, a physical location, or you avoid something here or here, it's still the same thing. So what that prolonged exposure does is we go there. We go back to those, because over and over and over again, once you become desensitized to it, it becomes okay. So that's one thing we do. We also do EMDR, the acronym for eye movement sensitization reprocessing. And that's really one of the cornerstones of what we do. And that's really what made me want to get into mental health in the first place, is I saw that being done. And someone that had been struggling with something for years, in 3 days, they could talk about it without reacting. They became okay with it. And it was just amazing to see. And it's like, I want some of that.
Wow.
Yeah. So basically, it was invented by a lady named Francine Shapiro back in the 80s. She accidentally she stumbled upon it. So she was suffering from breast cancer. She remembers thinking about her own vulnerability to breast cancer, and she remembered looking back and forth. And so she made the connection. After her walk, she just felt better.
Yeah.
So she made the connection between the eye movement, which is supposed to replicate REM sleep. So when you're dreaming, while you're in REM, you're processing the past, whether it was yesterday or 30 years ago. And so it's linked to that. So what it does is this dysfunctionally stored memory or belief. A lot of times it's a belief. So it's what we go through, it's what we see, it's what we witness, but also maybe the deeper part is what we have to say about ourselves as it relates to what we went through. So in public safety, it's powerless, helpless, I'm not safe, I'm going to die, those kinds of things, and guilt. Guilt and powerless are two huge things in our profession.
Really?
Yep. So if we can change their mindset on, okay, I don't feel guilty. I did my job with all the information that I had at the time. I did what I was supposed to do. And there's all kinds of other, I'm kind of simplifying it, but
sure.
It's just neat after maybe an hour and a half or 2 hour session of EMDR, how people just, it's like a switch is turned on or turned off, whatever the case may be. Yeah.
So how is it funded? How do you pay for it?
So right now, being that we are a 501c3, so of our 2 admissions that we just got, one has Medicaid. We're not a Medicaid facility, but we're not going to say no. You can't be a 501c3 and then turn people away at the same time. So so they're with us. So donations, and then so we will take insurance money. So once insurance starts coming in, and then donations, that's how we get our money. So we're not going to say, unfortunately, there are still in 2025, there are a few counties in Georgia that do not offer their employees health insurance. One not too far from us. So if they come to us and say, I don't have the $20,000 or $30,000 that it's going to take me to go through this program. Okay, no problem. Bring your stuff. Yep. So yeah, that to help offset those kinds of things is yes. That's why we'll take donations.
And so, in terms of with other traditional facilities, what were some of the biggest needs that you saw that traditional facilities were not addressing?
I think a lot of it is, so there are other facilities around the country, since mental health has become such a big thing, that are developing first responder tracks or first responder programs, but their facility in general will take anyone, which is fine, but a special problem takes a special fix. And in public safety, that is a special population.
Yeah.
So, and let's face it, most of these other programs are for profit. So it was a money grab for a lot of places to say, look, we have this. And we wanted the special population to address that. One of our mottos is for first responders by first responders. We have a couple of guys that are helping us from New York. Between the both of them, they've got 47 years on the job. So they've been through all this. They've been through Jim Banish, one of our VPs. His brother was a New York State trooper and took his life in April 1st of 2008. Went home on his lunch break and took his life. So we've all been there, done that, so we get it. We have that understanding right off the bat. And that can oftentimes be a roadblock. If I go see a clinician that is not culturally competent with our profession, and I'm freaking them out with my story, then right away you can no longer help me.
Yeah.
Because you're being triggered by my story.
Right.
The clinicians we have, they're not going to be triggered.
Yeah.
So that's a huge roadblock with some of these other facilities that go up is they're not culturally competent. That's a big thing. And it's more than just saying you have a program. It's, okay, great. What does that program look like? Who are your people? What's the end goal? Is it to make $1 million or is it to help these people? I think it's incumbent upon a society to want healthy first responders.
Sure.
Because when you're having your worst day, who do you want showing up? Do you want someone that's struggling themselves, or do you want someone that's doing pretty well and has practiced self-care and can check most of the blocks as far as their well-being goes? So that's why I think it's so important.
Yeah. Well, you didn't do this alone. We mentioned earlier Cliff Richards. He's your co-founder, and he just happens to be here in studio today, so I figured we'd get him in here. Tell us a little bit about your involvement in this work and your involvement in this new endeavor.
Okay, well, thank you for having us today.
Absolutely.
Andy had approached me, like he said, I guess around 2019, because we had a facility that we wanted to open up a treatment center in our community to help with the heroin and opioid addiction. And so the Hale Foundation, which is, I'm employed with the Hale Foundation, I've been there coming on 19 years, and we offer a long-term residential program for men, just 12-step supportive facility. So I've kind of been in the people business for years, and I love the nonprofit work. I love being able to help a certain demographic. So most of our guys are men. We don't deal with females, just men. But when Andy approached me about this, I was kind of shocked and blown away that I thought maybe there was more of these facilities around. And when he told me that, it just being in the people business, I thought, what a great demographic to be able to support. I've always been a fan of law enforcement, always appreciated them, all first responders, matter of fact. And I was really impressed with the fact that he had approached us and that there was a possibility. And so as our board of directors and I and Andy made a presentation to help get this thing going, they were as excited about it as I was. But we didn't realize it was going to take us this long.
How long did it take?
We actually got the property in 2017. It was donated by a benefactor.
Okay.
And we started on a process to get a civilian treatment center up and running. That took about 2 years, and then we were voted down. And to be honest with you, I thought we were going to have to sell the property. But when Andy approached us, I thought, well, this is a great mission. So here we are, 5-6 years later. We've assembled an amazing team. And I'm just excited to be a part of it, to be able to help with this problem. And, you've talked a lot about the peer support. And, the 12-step program, we kind of started the peer program. That was a original peer program, one alcoholic helping another. And that's probably the most effective tool that we have. Because, even with addiction, people tell people with addiction, you've got a problem, you need to do this, you need to do that. But information for an alcoholic is useless. But the identification, if you can get another person that's been where that guy is, that can say, hey, here's what I had to do, that's powerful. And really, essentially, that's what we're doing with Valor. The peers are really going to be one of the important tools that we have. We need the mental health professionals, naturally. But the peers bring a lot to the program too, because then that first responder can say, hey, you know what? I'm not by myself. I'm not alone. There's other people that have done this. So we're excited about it.
Yeah. And how would you say that your combined experience is shaping the dynamic of Valor Station? Because each of you brings something a little bit different to the table and necessary.
Yeah.
How is that going to shape the dynamic of Valor Station?
Well, I don't know. I just, from my perspective, I've had to go to school on the culture because I didn't know anything about it, And the more I've studied it and learned it, we talk about the stigma, how to change that stigma within the ranks. I personally think it's got to come from the top down. And like with recovery, in trauma, in the law enforcement field, you shouldn't be punished for needing help. I think the way to change the culture is when someone has the guts enough to say, hey, I need help, that person should be rewarded. That's how you break the stigma. There should be a reward in saying, hey, this profession is killing me. It's not the trauma that I see is killing people. It's the stigma of it by not asking for help. That's what trauma can be treated. It's treatable. You see the veterans, they get treated and they have productive lives.
Right.
But the stigma is what's killing the first responders of saying, I can't go to my superiors and tell them this. I'll be I'll be labeled. I won't get any opportunity for advancement, no promotions. I'll be considered weak.
Jeez.
And I think that, from the outside looking in, that's where the problem lies.
I think that in itself seems to be the dynamic here. Then, so if you can look at it, just a person having to learn about what it is to be a first responder, and you can see what's needed, and you're in it, and you can see that, just validates that we're really on to something here.
Yeah, and I felt like that from the very beginning. Like I kind of like had this picture of where this thing could go, and I think that's been, for me personally, that's been the driving force to try to make this thing happen. And I've kind of been relentless at it.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
I mean,
good.
and we, you know, because we were able to assemble now an amazing team of professionals that have been involved in this for years, and collectively put all that knowledge together
Right.
to be able to offer this is pretty incredible.
Is Valor Station the first of its kind?
That we know of. It's the that we know of. It's the first 501c3 exclusive facility for first responders.
That's amazing.
Let me say this too.
Yeah.
Cliff is the most altruistic person I've ever met. He is, and so that's where it all starts. You can have all of knowledge, experience in our profession, but if you don't have empathy, if you're not altruistic, then it's not going to work. So Cliff has all the basic ingredients that are so necessary in doing this.
Yeah.
And to his point, there are a ton of people in public safety and in the military that have a diagnosis of PTSD that are just killing it. They're doing great because they've gotten help. They went out there and they've gotten that help. And just because you have that diagnosis, okay, so you have a diagnosis, something happened and you've got this.
Right.
But they've done the work, and maybe because of the work they've done, they've got something called post-traumatic growth. Yeah, you have this diagnosis, but you're better than you were before. Whatever it was that gave you this diagnosis of PTSD, you're better than that now.
And we don't hear that.
Right.
We never hear. That's the first time I've really heard that.
Yeah. So post-traumatic growth is a term coined by two psychologists that worked at UNC Charlotte in the mid-'90s, 1995. And it's kind of like, I'm simplifying it by saying that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, because there's a lot of research in that. You can't just sit and wait for it to happen. There's some work that you have to do. But I think it's because of the work that you do. It's like anything else. If it's worth it, then you should have worked for it. Post-traumatic growth is no different. So these people that they have said, to heck with the stigma, I'm going to get help, and they come out of it the other end so much better than they were.
Right.
Yep.
So let's break down one more time who you're serving. Tell me again who's served by Valor Station. Either one of you.
Go ahead.
All first responders, law enforcement, fire, EMS, dispatchers, corrections. Anyone that's has or suffers from that job specific trauma that needs help. That's what we're there for.
I found it interesting that you added in corrections. We don't normally add in corrections when we're talking about first responders. And so why was it important to bring corrections into the mix?
With corrections, they have and to me, if you haven't been behind the console of a 911 center, if you haven't worked in a prison, you don't know what you don't know. But the reactions that they have, getting back to the powerless, helpless, I'm in fear for my life, I might die. So take dispatchers, for example. The helpless part, they have an officer or trooper on the other end of the line that's doing a felony traffic stop, and then there's radio silence for a minute, but it seems like an hour.
Yes.
That helpless feeling behind. And then they never have any kind of, for lack of a better word, closure behind some things. Like, so often they will talk to someone that's involved in a domestic dispute, and they could be the last person that they ever spoke to, because they don't survive that situation. There's so much that goes on behind that console that we can't fathom unless you've done it.
That's right.
So with corrections, same thing. And they work in such a dangerous area. If we're involved in a bad call in law enforcement, we can go for a drive after or go do something, kind of decompress. when you're involved in something in a prison or a jail, you can't leave there. You're still there. You know, I don't know if you saw in the news what's happened up in New York recently.
Yes.
And that's and Jim Banish, one of our partners here at Valor Station, that came down. His girlfriend Liz just left one of the most. So you have Sing Sing, Attica, and there's another place called Great Meadows that they just shut down. That's another maximum security. The worst of the worst are there. And when they shut down, she came down and has a job down here now. But so it is hitting her right here. All the stuff that's happening.
Yeah. Was it 2,000 correctional officers basically let go, fired? Yep. They had they were on strike, and it's just it's a lot going on.
Yeah, the conditions were horrible for them.
But I'm just so pleased that corrections was brought into the fold. Me being the daughter of a retired prison warden. Yep. My mom would be happy to hear that corrections is well represented and accepted into this, and that someone considered them. So I'm grateful for that because they go through a lot, and they've seen a lot too.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's great. Gosh, this is so much information. I mean, it's like it's like part 2 or part 3 for sure that we need, because we almost need to go down and visit the facility and do a walkthrough, a walk and talk. Yep. We kind of need to be on site to see the place, and so I don't know. We may have to set something up. I would love to come down and do that. So how can people support Valor Station's mission?
So on our website, we have a donate page, and we there's opportunity to donate monthly, whatever you can give. And like Andy had referred to earlier, the purpose of that is being a nonprofit, is coming from a nonprofit world. It's tough, you know. Our little organization, we struggle every year for funding, and but with Valor, we have an opportunity to help people that are uninsured. A lot of the local rural fire departments, volunteer fire departments, a lot of the small agencies, like Andy had said, they're not insured, and if they have some issues from a critical incident, they're hopeless.
Right.
And we want to be able to serve those people. So that's going to require having a pool of resources set aside so that we could help them pay for their treatment.
Right.
We kind of want to somehow or another model it after St. Jude's, you know, that if you have a child that's hurt, insurance should not be a deterrent for treatment.
Right.
It should never, especially mental health treatment. And our country's lacking in that. So we want to kind of bridge that gap by being able to, that's why I wanted to, it was important for me to make it a nonprofit corporation so that we could do that.
What's the website?
It's www.valorstation.com.
Okay.
Yeah, get all the information you need on our program we serve. There's the phone contacts there. If any first responders are hearing this, they feel like they need help, they can make a confidential call and just get some information from any of the therapists that answer the phone. We'd be more than happy to talk to them.
Okay. And are spouses and families brought into the fold in any way during treatment? Are they a part of the treatment process at all?
So not necessarily a part of the treatment program, but we do include them. So if we look at kind of a precursor to what we're doing, the 3-day post-critical incident seminar, we encourage spouses to come to that because, you know, if you're a first responder, sometimes we think we're protecting our spouse by not sharing. And, you know, again, they don't know what they don't know. And so often they just want to know that you're okay. And they want to know what you're going through. Some people, if something happens, they just want to know the rated G version and they know that you're okay. Then there may be someone else that wants to know everything. They want to know how far the blood was spattered. They want to know everything, you know. So my answer to that is let them be the judge. Let your spouse determine, you know, what they want to know. Because if you think you're protecting them, maybe you're just harming the relationship more than you're helping it. So if you're in our 28-day program, we'll have weekends to where your spouse can come down and we'll involve them with things. But, since we're pretty new, we want to be if we're going to be holistic, then let's be holistic. Let's involve the family, let's involve the kids. So we do want to get to the point where, so Cliff and I were talking about a version of the Ronald McDonald House when a family, spouse or kids come into town, especially if they're from far off. We don't want to have them have to get a hotel, so we can put them up right there near our campus. So there definitely are things in the works for the immediate future for that.
You think there'll be any expansion?
Definitely. We feel it. We feel the needs there.
Yeah.
Our goal right now is just to get up and just perfect the business model, to get it running smoothly, and then we'll have an opportunity to expand.
Yeah, we've already looked at some other places, Colorado and New York and different places. So, but we want, before we can be good anywhere else, we want to be good here at home first.
Sure, absolutely.
Yep.
I've enjoyed this interview a lot, and I've learned so much I didn't know about. And for any listeners right now who may be sitting in their patrol car, sitting in the ambulance, waiting on the next call to come out, a dispatcher who might be listening, and they're struggling right now, what words would you give to them to help them see that there is light at the end of the tunnel?
So again, going back to the post-critical incident seminar, you can't explain what it is. You have to come there and experience it. So whether it's a post-critical incident seminar for 3 days, whether it's coming in for counseling once a week, or whether it's going through our whole 28-day program, you didn't know how bad you needed it till after you got it. So it's one of those things, you have to experience it. And maybe you're left with saying, I wish I'd done this 4 years ago, or I wish I'd done this a long time ago. It's the ones that, suicide rates they're through the roof. If you look at all first responders, and they're hard to track because of what's written on a death certificate, for different reasons. Then retirees is even more impactful, because you think about it when I don't know if you went through this when you retired, but we're steadily getting it, 25, 30, 35-year career even, and then you stop. Well, it's almost like you're Superman, you're flying around, and all these critical incidents are flying along behind us, and we stop, and those critical incidents don't. We have time to think. In the solace and silence of retirement, all this stuff comes back. So that stuff that we put in a box, it opens itself up. Ready or not, here it comes. So my thing is, and maybe this will sum up what you said, deal with this stuff right now on your own terms. Take that box out into the light, open it yourself, deal with it a little bit, close it back up, open it back up a little more, deal with it. And then hopefully you'll be left with saying, I wish I'd done this a lot sooner. Because you don't want to, because at one time, at some point, things are going to slow down. And you want to dwell on good things. You don't want to have to lay awake at night thinking of something that happened 15 years ago.
Right. Oh, that's good. And can retirees also get help as well?
Yes. Or let's say there's someone that worked that was a paramedic for 8 or 10 years, or a police officer for 18 or 20 years. Let's say someone that didn't retire because of something that happened at work, whether it's administrative betrayal, whether it's – because all the stuff is just one big mess. It's all kind of bundled together. And they left because of the job. Then, yes, you can come also. You can come to us.
Okay.
So it's not just retirees. It's someone that, say, worked in the profession for a while, and because of something that happened at work, they left. Yeah, we'll help you too.
Okay. Wow. And then tell me a little bit about your staff. Again, like who are they going to be talking to? Who are these people?
So you want to cover this, or you want me to?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So, of course, you have Cliff and I, and then so Jim Banish. He is the president of the New York Law Enforcement Assistance Program.
Okay.
I met Jim years ago at a seminar, and in 2019, they had their first post-critical incident seminar, and he asked me if I would serve as his clinical director for it. So I've been their clinical director since 2019. Jim retired last year, and his brother, like I said, took his own life. And he wrote a book about the experience, and it's excellent, and about how it not just affected him, but his family, the relationship within the family, the nightmare, 2-year nightmare in the aftermath of his brother's suicide, what he went through. So he's one of our vice presidents, and he is over international law enforcement liaison is what he does. So Jim is an absolute rock star. So Matt Carpenter also came down. He's the vice president of the New York Law Enforcement Assistance Program. Started out his career with NYPD in the Bronx, left there and went upstate to be closer to home, to Rochester. Finished out his law enforcement career there. Matt got a PhD. It's mental health related. So he's a numbers guy, statistics and researcher, and Matt is an absolute asset. He crosses all the T's, dots all the I's. He's amazing. We have 2 clinicians named Jennifer and Christy. Christy's our clinical director. Her husband was a Navy veteran, been in for a long time. She's amazing. Jennifer, one of our other clinicians, she's also a nurse, an RN. She's amazing. They're working with clients as we speak right now. Then we have a couple of other support staff, and you mentioned this when we were going back and forth in the email the other day about growing, and we've got people in the pipeline that we're wanting to recruit and hire. And we think we're going to have to hire them pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think so. I just see this spreading, this model spreading nationwide for sure, very easily. Yeah, so hang on, guys. Yeah.
And we've got some folks, that are, I don't want to mention their names. I mean, they're household names in the 501c3 that are wanting to join us and help us out.
Right.
Got to be very careful with how we do that, because we want a partnership. We don't want people to take over.
Right. Gotcha.
So hopefully that'll come to pass here pretty soon.
Well, very good. Well, I've enjoyed the interview. Did we miss anything?
I think so.
No?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I told Cliff when I said, look at the questions. So I read them on the way up here. I mean, they were like, not just they were just spot on, great questions that you asked.
Well, the answers were even more excellent. So that's the part I like. When you love what you do, and you're into it, it's like not even hard to do to sit here and answer questions about it. You've been really passionate about helping first responders for a long time.
But you know what? It was all accidental. Martin Team, he asked me if I'd be a part of the peer support team back in 2009. So at that time, Colonel Hitchens went to the Southern Colonels Conference in Myrtle Beach. And Eric Skidmore, who we stole everything from him. Eric, he did a presentation on it. And then at that time, Major McDonough asked me if I would, kind of be the coordinator, I guess. And I was like, I went from questioning, it's like, yeah, sure, to it being a passion. So it was almost accidental how all this happened. Yeah. And then, like I said, when I saw EMDR for the first time, and the affect in that person from that morning to, say, Monday morning to Wednesday afternoon, they're a different person. And that person's now peer support, like one of the go-to people on their peer support team. Yeah. This is in North Carolina. Yeah. So it's just neat to see these people. It's not that they're your children, but it's just neat to see people that, and you wonder, okay, what would have happened to this person had they not come here? What would have? So it's just neat to see these people just doing so well. And that's where, I told Cliff, I said, I'd do this for free. Yeah. That's what's neat to see. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you're in the right lane.
Yeah, I hope so.
Doing good things. So both of you are. Well, thank you for joining me on this episode. All right, best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for this powerful episode of Safe Nation. If you're a first responder or love someone who is, please share this message. Valor Station isn't just a treatment center. It's a refuge built by those who understand the hidden battles our heroes face. Help is here. Hope is real. Healing is possible. I'm your host, Nikki Renfro. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and remember, you're never alone.